Coogs house. It wasn't always pretty, but it didn't ever really fill in all that much doubt. Houston holds on and wins the Bayou Bucket 35-9, and it stays in the third ward for the foreseeable future.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. Here to talk all things Cougs. If you're a hater, just a Houston fan, hater, as a bye. I'm excited to the point I'm getting messing my words, but please let us know down below how you like to cook your rice. Now, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. We got more on that fun later, but I do want to talk about Houston's win over Rice in the most authentic or real way possible. I want to celebrate the things that went well in the second half, but I don't want to just go past the stuff that happened in the first half like it never happened. So I'm going to try and balance that both out today. The first segment, I want to talk some about where this offense is, where it came from, and where it could go. That's a lot. We're going to try and do that all in segment one. Second spot, the bright spot is the defense. The best, second is the best, as we're going to talk about. So we're going to talk about them second because that group continues to impress, even against opponents like Stephen of Austin and Rice. Last segment, we're going to try something called nightcaps, where we talk about things we want to put a cap on or hand something out to, either this kind of cap or this kind of cap, whatever you want to go with. But first and foremost, the offense, and I wrote this down in the early third quarter, and it's in my notes, and admittedly, things changed afterwards, but I think it stands the same. The biggest issue with the offense appears to be execution. Guys got to catch the ball, even if it's wet. Throws need to be up where guys can get a chance to get it. Guys have got to have a chance to throw the ball right. The biggest issue with the offense is that it does not feel like all 11 players are executing at the same time on the same play all that often. It's like one thing's wrong here, one thing's wrong there. And what's very obvious is that nothing is quite good enough to work past that. If we're missing a left guard like we were all night long, Jason Queso Brooks, if you missed the pregame report, did not suit up this game. He was kind of the only consistent spot on the offensive line as far as starting goes throughout camp and last week. Haven't seen or heard anything on the injury. If you know what that is, though, throw in the chat. I had not seen or heard anything. DM'd a couple guys when I saw, but they're obviously out there playing. So we'll hear more about them, I'm sure, over the course of the week. Obviously, with a Big 12 game this week, too, you should get injury reports. But that was missing, so things got thrown off. Wet football, a couple drops. We can't, make up for it. We, have a net zero play on second down. Stepping up in the pocket, getting flushed out, and we can't make a completion on them. Those kinds of things didn't happen every single time, but execution was not great. I will also say that I think if you ask Slade Nagel, if you ask Willie Fritz, if you ask anyone who's studied this offense when it's happened in the past, this is going to be a run-heavy offense that grinds games out. That's what they did at Tulane. It got flashy at the end because they scored a lot of points, but that was still Tajay Spears was still the crux of what they were doing, right? You lost Rashawn Sanford the week before the season started to an injury. You lost Dean Connors for a stretch of tonight. You didn't have Jamarian Burnett, also mentioned in that injury report at the start of the game tonight. So suddenly, you're working with an offense that's based on running backs, and you don't have as many running backs. A strength of this team, we talked about in August, right, is kind of having hands tied behind their backs. I don't think that makes excuses for execution in other areas, but I do think this offense is predicated on having a strong running back room. DJ Butler didn't quite get the spin I thought he might tonight when Connors went down. Connors admittedly did come back, and he had spat around his right ankle, so I assume that his right ankle got rolled up on, so we're talking about there. But Connors continues to impress. Impressed last week, impressed this week. 2 big breakaway runs with speed that he didn't get to show off a whole lot at Rice. It doesn't feel like he got to show off when he came to this side of the rivalry. For what it's worth, he's 2-1, 3-1, 2-2 in this rivalry, having played on both sides of it. Now I will also think that I don't mean this in a way that excuses only having 7 points at halftime. And I don't mean this in a way that excuses almost being outgained in yardage by Rice at halftime. I want to stress, like, I don't think that that's okay either. I think you're okay to think that as a fan as well, right? Those things are not okay. I also think there's some gamesmanship in, you got Colorado in a conference game next week, and you've only gone deep to Boogie once, deep to Kobe twice, right? Like, I think there's something in that. And for what it's worth, I think Colorado's doing the same thing. We're in the Big 12 Locked On host group chat, and I'm giving Kevin Borba a hard time, host of Locked On Buffs, because they played 3 quarterbacks tonight. Scout, that's just to mess up your scouting. They played 3 quarterbacks in the meat and potatoes of a game that was not a breakaway yet. Like, I think there is some of that. Overall, I think people are quick to jump on this, that, and the other thing. And last year, it felt like the offense coordination was not coordinated. The year before, there was no coordinator. The year before that, it felt like Shannon Dawson was just not the right coordinator for the skill guys that he had on the team. So we had problems there in the past. But in the Slade and Angle offense that is this year, I don't feel like it's play calling all the time. I really do feel like there are times where, like, hey, look, man, I know that football's wet when you came across them in the middle there, but that needs to be a completion. You got a guy trailing you, the ball's put in front of you. It should be a first down, right? I think there are times when you got to step on the pocket and let one rip, and instead just step up in the pocket and slip, or step up in the pocket and throw a duck. And I think that those kinds of things are execution. I don't think it's necessarily even the wrong guy on this roster doing the job. I think that's a common thing people go to too. I think at this point in the season, 2 games in, there's still problems executing things. We talked about going into the first game about how, like, there are no preseason games and how that's going to lead to some, bad ball in the first couple games. And look across college football, folks, like offense. I mean, there were some, blowouts where, like, a D2 school played Minnesota or whatever, and that kind of thing. Like, those, Florida State played somebody and beat the crap out of them. Those kind of blowouts happen, but in closer talent games, not that Rice is quite the same place, obviously, in closer talent games, you're going to have offenses struggling the first couple games. That's just the way things, especially when you don't hit at practice and stuff like that, like you did 20 years ago. I feel, I feel like that's the way things go. Now, I look at the potential of this offense, and this probably come up in nightcaps as well, but like, when Connor just, like, makes his pre-read decision, lets back and fires one over 74 yards to Boogie Johnson, right? I understand it's a Rice defensive back that's been running around all night and is, like, tired or whatever. But, like, I think Boogie's able to go get that ball against a lot of DBs in the Big 12. He did it at Oklahoma State, did it at Houston last year. I think he can, right? I think there are moments like that give me confidence, like this execution problem can be fixed, practiced, repped out, repped through, etc. And I don't think it's got to be a long-term problem. But when people say, like, Parker, what's Big 12 group text blowing up, Parker, what are you at 7-3 against right? Or people on my Twitter feed, Parker, what's wrong? Like, I think the problem is just simple, that they didn't play very well. They didn't execute. And I don't know that that's a personnel problem, although I'm sure if Fritz and them think that someone can execute the job better, they will. Like I said, I think that the left guard hurt you. That was, by my unofficial count, like just me keeping tallies here in my notes app as I'm going, I counted 4 different times that a direct QB pressure could be attributed to the left side of the interior of the offensive line. Not looking at schemes and what they're whatever, just like there is a left guard there that was not starting for the last 8 weeks, right? So something could be wrong there. And Dukeway, the backup left tackle, also not there tonight. He didn't play as much in the first game. I thought he might have. He didn't on the field all night. He wasn't in pad. So we'll see. But that's anything of the offense, man. Is they're still not executing at a high level, and I know that that's sometimes oversimplification. But at some point, you also got to look at, like, this team had like 9 passing touchdowns last year. And they've had 4 in 2 games. Like, I understand that it's not great, and last year was legitimately at the bottom of the NCAA FBS football, but like it obviously can be worse and still win Big 12 games. They won 3 Big 12 games with that offense last year. So I am optimistic but critical, if that makes any sense. I think that there are things that need to be done better. I think that they can be done better, and I'm not convinced yet that these guys can't do those things better. Kind of comments there. Maybe that's people disagreeing with me. We'll check on that in a second. We'll also talk about the defense in the second segment. But before we get too far, I do want to remind folks that today's show is brought to you by our folks over at DoorDash, because right now it's the weekend. You're sitting around, game just wrapped up. Like, what am I going to eat for dinner? Think about who you're going to have deliver. Just like we thought about who delivered tonight, Dean Connors delivered big time for the Houston Cougars. Big time runs, tough plays, gutsy plays, big performance out of him. Caught the ball on the flat, blocked in pass protection, all the things. And if you've been watching week after week, I guess 2 weeks at this point, you know that probably wasn't a fluke. He's probably just that guy. Just like Dean Connors played for the Houston Cougars tonight and delivered, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash streaks. You save every Saturday your order. Stack it up all season long. You can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo is going through November 18th this season. Also, today's show is brought to you by everybody's over at Mazda. And this is fun because I really drive a Mazda. And Mazda crafts cars for those who choose to do more than simply move. They follow what moves them every time they drive. That makes me feel good about the way I drive my Mazda. And this is what makes Mazda stand out. There's go beyond safety, style, performance, deliver a driving experience that feels alive in every detail. Big deal. We have a toddler, needed car seats. The 2025 IIHS Top Safety Pick Awards, they had more of those than any other manufacturer. You can feel in the moment you get behind the wheel, smooth handling, intuitive controls, all-wheel drive, and the crossover SUVs. It's a big deal. Small details to make the big plays. And just like there's more to every player, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Park Ranger Locked on Coogs. You got a lot of comments flying in. I love the participation on YouTube. We have more of this. We're doing live after games this year. Love it. We got, thank goodness for the second half. They're having their fried rice with chicken. I think the fried is the rice with the chicken there. That was fun. Willie Ball. Remember what it's like to be in 2-0. The deep ball, that's got to get a cab. We'll talk about the cabs in a second. 52 points through the first 5 games last year. Scored over 60 through these first 2. Already a massive plus. Dean Connors, 100% running back 1. Now these are comments flying through on the YouTube channel. If you're listening on audio platforms after the fact, you can join us after games. For what it's worth, I think some people were asking last week about the post-game. I mentioned that we have Locked on the City of Houston's post-game host, Michael Connors. He is going to be helping us out, obviously posted on this channel, but there's also an Astros game tonight that he's covering during the post-game with that as well. Pretty big Astros following. If you haven't noticed, they're a pretty big deal. So I was like, I got this on my own, folks. take the Stros, Michael. And at one point I texted him, I think that they're scoring more over in the baseball game. But anyway, speaking of scoring, Rice did not do a lot of it. And listen, there was part of me that wanted to sarcastically come on here and say, I can't believe they gave up a fourth quarter touchdown. But it took 111 minutes of football this season for the Houston Cougars to give up a touchdown. And look, people are going to be critical of the opponents. I get it. And say like, well, it's Stephen F. Austin. Well, it's Rice. Well, it's whatever. But like that offense at Rice is hard to prepare for because it's the only time you're going to see it all year. And they're going to beat teams this year, including last week when they beat Louisiana Lafayette. They're going to beat teams that they're not supposed to beat. I mean, even tonight, scoring 9 points, they put up 177 yards on the ground. I would say holding an offense that is predicated on running the football to 177 yards on the ground, 3.3 a carry, is a good sign. That means they run it 3 times, they don't get a first down, right? 3.3, 3.3, 3.3, that's 9.9. I teach history, not math, but I think that's less than 10. Big shout out on the defense. I continue to be impressed by the defensive line, but it was the interior guys tonight. Carlos Allen, Khalil Laufau, and Eddie Walls, who's really more of an edge rusher, played a big run stopping role, I thought, in this one. Really big play out of that trio of guys. They were the only defensive line, but the starting interior 3 guys, the 3 guys that always had their hand in the dirt. Really impressive. Carlos Allen moves so well for a guy his size. And I sent him a DM after the game. Like, that was the kind of game that when people were like, can this defensive tackle play in the NFL? You saw a guy that size moving side to side laterally with great speed, running through blocks as he's moving laterally to get around them. Really, really impressed with his presence. And then Khalil Laufau is he was a power 4 or power 5 defensive lineman, went to Washington State. That whole thing fell apart, obviously. He looks like an upperclassman veteran power 4 defensive lineman, right? Like he looks the part. Big steal for Houston in the transfer portal in that way. And I think some people are kind of turning heads when he started the season as a guy on the first line of the depth chart, but he looks every bit the part right now. Brandon Mack got involved a lot today. I tweeted at I like Martin American a lot, who does stuff over at gocoogs.com. He does recruiting stuff for them, breaks down video. I tweeted him. I thought that it was interesting. It felt like every time Houston made a defensive play, Carlos Allen or Latreveon McCutcheon was kind of at the start of it, right? And I stand by that. I think Trevion obviously tipped the ball that became a pick 6 by Will James, which is important. But that flex position where it's like, hey, he's not Troy Polamalu, he's not the defensive back safety, but as far as the front 7 position goes, there's not a lot of ways to predict as an offense what Latrevion's going to be doing or where they're going to put him. And the dude just makes plays. And it might be like that where he tips the ball, someone else picks and goes for 6. It might be like keeping contain and forcing stuff back to his buddies. It might be frankly forcing a QB to hand the ball off in his own read situation, and there's no one on the front side. But Latrevion does so many of those like hard to calculate things that he really stands out. Pleasant surprise of the night. And I don't mean this in the way that he played bad last game. I actually think we were talking about Sione Fotu, one of the 2 interior linebackers, in part because Garner played so well last week, the other interior linebacker of the 2. But Fotu, in a run-heavy offense, playing against a run-heavy offense, really, really was attacked by Rice and stepped up in a big way. I'll pull up the stats right here, make sure I don't get the number wrong, but I was really, really impressed by how often he was everywhere. Latreveon McCutcheon at 11. I know he had a couple plays there in the final stretch there. I did not realize he had 11 tackles. He probably deserves a shout out. My bad, Latreveon. Trail doesn't like all the glitz and glam that DB normally does. I don't think he'll mind that, but Fotu had 6 tackles, six tackles. I got down 4 of them as solos, and he was in on half a sack as well, and a different half a tackle for loss. I feel like, though, that group being consistent is interesting because it was kind of the one between a couple transfers out in the back half, guys that Keontae Scott, AJ Halsey, Jeremiah Wilson, all 3 guys starting for schools that had big wins last weekend. I didn't even check their scores today, but in week 1-0. You lost those guys in the back end. You lost Keith Cooper, the NFL, Michael Batten to graduation. I think people were kind of anticipating a regression on defense. And I don't think that that's here, folks. I think the defense thing is real. I do think Austin Armstrong's scheme is interesting in that it shows off interior athletes in a different way. Whereas like last year, I felt like Halsey as a safety in the Shield Wood system kind of got shown off a little bit more. I think this is going to kind of show off what Latrevion does. And then we mentioned the interior linebacker play, whether it's Fotu this week or Garner last week, or Corey Platt had a big like twisting the dagger to end the game kind of sack down the stretch of this one. And frankly, Corey Platt, multiple extreme lower body injuries, Achilles and all that, like that he is back and playing is probably a shocker to anyone who just reads the injury list. And then you realize like he's really playing and still has like eyes in the NFL potential in the future. Like dude was definitely on track to be an NFL player pre-injury, and I'm sure still has his eyes set on that. Getting his legs back under him as the season goes on is going to be a big thing for Houston here. You know, some of the DBs didn't quite get tested. I mentioned Latreveon McCutcheon did end up with 11 tackles, a lot of perimeter stuff, forcing things. I mentioned Carlos Allen shifting stuff, making stuff go side to side. Someone's got to be out there to make the tackle right. But Rook Brown, shouts to Rook Brown. He's not a very big fella. I don't mean this in a bad way, Rook. He's listed 5'11", 190. I bet it's closer to 5'10". But honestly, Rook Brown there, I'm like, how if I were the opposing offense, I'd be like, how is this dude everywhere? He seemed to be kind of the nickel safety type to put in the box, and then to load the box up a little bit more against this option attack. And he was ready for it, man. He was really, really ready. Shouts to him being ready for that one this week. And I want to get into call some nightcaps, some tips of caps, some tip the mugs, kind of give some guys their props in the final segment, which has kind of been what I did a lot in the defensive segment as well, I guess. But before we get to all of that, let's talk a little bit about why you need to make some money on your gas tank. You heard me. Make money on your gas tank. If you're still paying full price for gas, you got to stop leaving money behind and get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app at the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use limited time promo code FOOTBALL and get 25 cents back per gallon the first time you fill up. You can make up to $300 just from buying the gas you already needed. First, I thought it was too good to be true, but again, this phone thing, the apps are great. I thought it was too good to be true. It's totally legit. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commute, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, an e-gift card from Amazon, and other brands. Don't let this offer drive by. Download the free Upside app now and use code FOOTBALL for a limited time, 25 cents per gallon bonus. It's promo code FOOTBALL. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. It's also brought to you by FanDuel, folks. You know that the NFL season, the Texans play tomorrow. I believe it's tomorrow. And FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet hits, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love how it's in-game action, pre-game action, mid-game action, prop bets, over-unders, all the kinds of ways you want to get in on it are all available at FanDuel. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app today by downloading at FanDuel.com to get started. It's FanDuel.com. Pledge your first $5 bet. Win up to $300 in bonus bets back. Parker Ainsworth locked on Coogs here. And I have people in the comment section are all over the place in this one. Let's see. Dean Connors, 100% tip of the cap kind of guy. Nightcap to Dean Connors, running back one, especially with, there was a question with Sanford out, and I still feel like Stacey Snead's going to get his share of carries this year, but 13 carries, 132 yards, 10.2 per carry, and 2 touchdowns. That 54-yarder obviously being the highlight. Dean Connors' tip of the cap. Now, people point out, too, that the run was a little ineffective here until Dean Connors pointed out those gaps. I do think that was a war of attrition in that instance. People talk about offensive line. I'd say execution. Right, we get on that. I would point out, though, that when people criticize the Willie Fritz offense, he's a defensive and special teams guy at his heart of hearts. This is a Nagel system. They have worked together before, but I get that a little bit. Uncomfortable going to conference play. Totally get it. Pieces are there, though. And I feel like that's the biggest thing is the pieces are there. As we come on down here, let's see what else we got. I love burnt rice. I guess that's because we just burnt rice. There goes a comment there about loving burnt rice. Joe Mendez is confident, though, they're really going to open it up against Colorado. I really, really hope that's – and frankly, I don't think it's – I think it's possible. I think it's possible. Execution tonight was a problem for the first half, at least, probably midway through the third quarter, being honest with ourselves. But look, I want to give the deep ball a tip of the cap to. We got Connor Weigman and touted his 5-star status as a high school kid. And I think if you ask an Aggie, Aggies are my least favorite. But if you ask an Aggie, if you asked someone from Bridgeland even, that they might say, listen, it's a lot of potential. It just ain't never been hit yet. And that's what potential means. It means you ain't done it yet, right? I see all that. The tools are there. You hope things like letting the deep ball loose and finding Boogie there, a guy he's comfortable with, right? We talked to Boogie at media days. They played 7-on-7 together as kids, right? You hope that kind of builds some confidence. What you never know. So Connor was so highly touted at high school and got to A&M, tried to play hurt a couple times. It just couldn't get the job done playing hurt. And extensively hurt, like shoulder and bicep and stuff like that. It was bad. What you just don't know is like how much you got to undo from some of that. And I think we're seeing there's more of that to undo between what all was going on at A&M last year, or the fact that they changed coaches a couple of times while I was there, and who know the Jimbo Fisher experiment clearly failed for them. They paid a bajillion dollars to get rid of him. I just feel like there's a lot to undo there still. Like he's stepping in the pocket a little hesitantly, and really there's times where there's pressure. I don't mean to say there's not, like, so tip the cap to Connor for get one complete deep. I thought he worked through that well over the course of the night. Tip the cap to Latrell. Latrell, 11 tackles. I knew he had a big game. I don't guess I realized he had 11 tackles, 6 solos in this one. Carlos Allen, 9 tackles. An interior defensive lineman, admittedly, against an option team, but a guy that gets the most double teams on the roster had 9 tackles in this game. Just spectacular. What a ball player. Brandon Mack. So back when Brandon transferred in from Ole Miss, I remember DMing Stephen Willis, Locked on Ole Miss host, and he was like, "I want him to do so well, Parker." Like that was like his thought. It was like, the guy's a great guy, a great teammate. He just hasn't been healthy while he's at Ole Miss. Needs a fresh start. Not unlike Connor, frankly, right? Just wasn't quite the same high school prospect, maybe. But he looked the part tonight. And maybe it was the fact that they were playing a run-heavy offense that played into his strengths a little bit. But Brandon Mack played really, really well. Corey Platt getting back on the field, having a big sack, big play out of him. I thought Jordan Allen played pretty well in the back half as well. We got to obviously give credit where it's due on the interception, making a pick 6 as the night went off. Now, Will James, I think, did other things well besides getting a pick 6, but we should point that out as well. 37 yards for touchdowns, no slouch. I don't think he had a whole lot of people to dodge or anything like that, right? It was a breakaway on the tip ball, but broke on the hitch pretty quickly after that. Offensively, though, we mentioned Connor, mentioned Boogie. Can we give credit to one guy I don't think anyone thought to give credit to? And he had a fairly mundane game tonight, and that's Tanner Kozel. And I say mundane, I guess he did have 6 catches for 52 yards. There were questions in my comment sections on Twitter. People worried all week about what was he going to look like. He was the only guy that could catch ball last week. And he did not have easy. He had one fairly good schemed ball over the middle, I thought, where he was open because of the way that the brackets were coming around him. But on the whole, he made some tough plays tonight. He got banged up last week. He took hits low. He just got up and walked it off in this ball game. He's going to get hit low all year long, folks, at 6'8" or whatever. I mean, he's a tall dude. That's where people are going to go down and get him, is at the ankles and knees. And he played through it. I also think that people give Connor a lot of flack. We opened up by saying, haven't got to undo coaching with some of the guys that have been through what he's been through. And maybe we'll investigate that over the course of the year as it becomes, as he gets coached through it, right? But he did throw the ball to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different players tonight. The ball got spread around pretty easily. Luke McGarry had a couple. Dean Connors had a couple. Makai Muse had one. I mean, the ball got spread around a lot. The bomb to Boogie, anyway, the bomb to Boogie felt pretty good, obviously. But on the whole, getting the ball to 7 different guys, I think, means that a defense can't focus on. I mean, Tanner's Tanner, right? Kozel's Kozel, but on the whole, I think not being able to focus on one is a credit to a good quarterback in a way that maybe doesn't jump off the page necessarily when he has 15 completions for 188 yards. Did have a touchdown though, and no picks. No picks is good. No picks is good. There were moments I did feel like, Willie Fritz talked about Coogs beating the Cougs or whatever, and Coogs can't beat the Cougs, I guess, is his mantra. And Houston only had 2 penalties tonight. They cut that down by 3/4 based on last week's 8. And I think that is something to be commended. Tip the cap, nightcap to Fritz and company on cleaning that up. Frankly, against a better opponent, right? Good opponents can force you into penalties if you're not, holding here or whatever. And, I guess that they didn't throw the ball so you didn't get as many PI chances, or didn't throw the ball a lot. But I would point out that that's That's a lot. 2 penalties for 23 yards is a lot less than the 8 we had a week ago, right? And so tip the cap to getting that done. Tip the cap to Coogs for being 2-0. It's been a minute since the Cougs were 2-0, man. Heading Colorado Friday. That's a Big 12 game. Deion Sanders comes to town. They played 3 quarterbacks. Now, if you watched Houston in the first half, you're probably worried about Colorado. Okay, that did not look like a team that's going a whole lot of Big 12 games with that offense in the first half. If you watch the Cougs in the second half, we're going to spend the week. We'll talk to Kevin Kevin Borba, Locked On Buffs guy, at some point. We'll also break this game down some. We got some stuff in store. I also haven't done much like a Big 12 show in a while, as far as like talking about things in the Big 12. It's Big 12 squad shows a little bit different. We got all kinds of things to get to you this week in preparation for a little bit of short week going to Colorado, or hosting Colorado, I should say, going to play Colorado. And that means we got to get a lot done. And so we'll be talking about this game more. I'll probably rewatch it tomorrow afternoon-ish. I got time to watch it. I'll rewatch this one tomorrow afternoon, maybe fill in some notes more thoroughly. But honestly, we got to get on to the Buffs. Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, coming to town. I think that's going to be a lot of – I mean, that game could be 2.5 hours. That's a lot of running. That's a lot. I mean, I thought this was going to be a lot of running too, and I guess it was fast. But this has been always be Locked On Cougs, the podcast about the Houston Cougars. I know Locked On Big 12 has been doing some stuff in the morning to break down all the games from the day. And yes, I do think Houston and Willie Fritz broke Kansas State. But I'm sure they'll break that down there too. It's Locked On Cougs, Locked On Podcast. I'm your team every day. Go Cougs.